Hi, friends. Okay, so for today's lesson, we're really just going to work through this book together. We're going to read it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about, the genre, and we're also going to be detectives for our hunk and chunks we've been practicing this week, which have been OW, ow, and OU, ow. Okay, so we're going to look for those as we go. And I already see one on the front page, so I want you to look really quickly in the title and see if you see one of our chunks. I'm going to give you a second. All right, I'm going to go ahead and circle that chunk right there. There it is, O-W, ow, right? And so let's sound this word out together. D-own, down, on, the, f. We know AR says R, f, arm, farm. Down on the farm, right? All right, let's go back and go ahead and move on to the next page. Okay, down on the farm. So the essential question is going to be what sounds we hear in the story and how those sounds are being made. Right, there's a couple different chapters we're going to read through. Let's go ahead and talk about our comprehension for this story. We're going to be talking about asking and answering questions. So as we read, our comprehension skill is that we ask questions to make sure we're understanding what we're reading, and we answer questions at the end to make sure that we understood the whole story. Okay, and the skill we're talking about in the story is problem and solution. We're going to be looking at the problem in the story and looking for that solution. Okay, let's talk about our vocabulary. Okay, so we've got the word color. Okay, early, like early in the morning. Instead, which means like replacing. Instead of doing this, you're going to do that. So doing something else. Nothing. Oh, this is the word scramble. Scramble means to like try to get something together really quickly, or like scramble eggs, which means kind of mix them up. Suddenly, like it happened really quickly, and thought, something you're thinking about. Okay, and we're talking about OU and OW. All right, let's move on to the first page. Okay, chapter 1, where is the farm? And remember, we looked at this page the other day because this is a great example of sounds being labeled on the picture. You can see that he's yelling tacos and he's yelling taxi. The dog's saying bark and the bell is ringing. So that's kind of what I was hoping you would get at in your labeling, is you would find the sounds in your picture and not just the objects, because that takes your picture a step farther. So I want you to look down here before I start reading, and I want you to see if you can find any OU or OW that is saying ow down here. Okay, OU or OW that's saying ow. I want you to try to find it for me. I'm going to give you just a second to look. So be those detectives for me. Look at the words. Look for OU and OW. All right, now we're going to go through and I'm going to, before we read, we're going to find them and box them in so that when we get there, we know. All right, so let's see. Oh, there's one. Okay. Sounds. OU, ow, sounds. Okay, keep going. See lots of other chunks we've practiced. Oh, there's OU. I'm going to box that one in. OU, ow, like in shouts. Maybe. Sometimes it's hard to get my box to work. Just draw it. Okay. OU, ow, right there. See if there's any more over here. There's one OW, ow, and an ow. All right, ready? So let's read together. Ready? My name is JC, and I am a city girl. I love the sounds of the city. I like to hear the horns, sirens, and shouts from the street. An old friend of my mom's lives on a farm. They haven't seen each other for years. Now, Mom is taking me to visit. All right, so let's talk so far about our story. So think really quickly to yourself. Who is the main character in the story? Okay, think about it. If you look back over here, you can see the main character is JC. And if you look at the picture, I'm going to guess it's this little girl because she's the one who's packing up to go somewhere. And we know from this first couple pages that JC's packing up to go to the farm. All right, the setting at the beginning is the city, as you can tell from the picture, but she's going to the farm. All right? Let's go to the next page. We stop in front of a small house, there's OU, on a dusty street. This doesn't look like a farm, I think. Where is the big red barn? Where are the cows? You're just in time for dinner, shouts Stella. There's another OU. Sit down and eat, says Stella. Dinner is great, but I'm confused. I thought this was a farm. The night is quiet. Instead of trucks and beeping horns, I hear nothing but soft rain. Oh, wait, I do hear something. What's that, I wonder? You can see the sound is labeled in the picture, ma, right there. Okay, let's keep going. Early the next morning, I wake up to louder sounds. I jump out of bed and peek outside. Suddenly, I understand. Remember, we said suddenly means all of a sudden, like real quick. All at once, she understands. Hens and roosters cluck and squawk for corn. Bees buzz around rows and rows of leafy plants. There's that other strange sound, too. Ma, ma. What is that, I wonder again? Okay, so think about right now. We know we're going to talk about the problem and the solution in our story. So let's talk about that. The problem in our story so far is, think about it. We've got JC and she's at the farm. The problem is she's hearing this sound and she doesn't know what it is. Kind of like the other read aloud that I posted on the Made You page. The kids in that story were hearing a sound and they couldn't figure out what it is. And this is the same thing. She's hearing one sound and she just can't figure out what it is. So let's see if she figures it out. Mom and Stella are busy working in the backyard farm. Wait for me, I yell, and I scramble down the stairs. Look at these beets, calls Mom. Did you ever see such a color? Are these all beets, I ask? These are carrots and this is kale, Stella answers. Kale is another kind of vegetable. I hear the sound again and look all around. What is that sound, I ask. Come on, says Stella. I'll show you, and bring those pails with you. Okay, fine. What's the answer? So now I'm guessing we're going to find the solution because she finally spoke up and asked, what is that sound? So let's see if you can guess based on the pictures, make your prediction. What do you think was making the sound? Pictures make it pretty easy to figure out. Say hello to Kiwi and Mango, says Stella. They call me when it's milking time. Goats give milk, I asked. They sure do, said Stella. You had some last night. Maybe you'll help me make some goat's cheese later, Stella says. How do you make cheese, I ask. It's easy, said Stella, for two farm girls like us. All right. So now we're going to go through, and I want you to pause really quickly. Okay, go ahead and stop the video here. And I want you to retell that story in your own words to someone near you. Tell it to your mom, to your dad, whoever's sitting, an older sibling. Tell it to your pet, to a stuffed animal, whoever you're with. Retell the story. Talk about who was the main character and where is the story at. Talk about what was the problem in the story, and then talk about how did she solve that problem. Okay, so right now I want you to pause the video and retell the story. Okay, great. Now that you've retold the story, we're going to answer these questions over here. And if you're ever on Wonders, once you get back here, you can click this little notebook so that you can answer the questions. So this says, look at page 7. What problem does JC have? So we could probably remember from the story, but we're going to go back to page 7 because it's important for us to use text evidence when we're answering questions, which means we go back and we look at the text and we use the text to answer questions, okay? So if we go back and we can look and it says that hens and roosters were clucking and squawking for corn, bees buzz around rows and rows of leafy plants. There's that other strange sound too. What is that, I wonder again? So think about it. The problem is that there's a strange sound and she doesn't know what it is, okay? So I'm going to write that. There is a strange sound, and JC does, there's one of our side words, not O, there's O-W-O, different than the ow, but we know that O-W says O and it says ow. It does not know what it is. All right. Let's go down to the next question. Look at page 10. How is JC's problem solved? All right, so now we're going to go over to page 10. Okay, and here's page 10. Oh, and that helps me remember. I don't have to reread because it helps me remember. The problem was solved when she asked what was the other lady's name? Stella. JC asked Stella what was making the noise, and Stella told her and showed her the goats. So JC asked Stella what the noise was, and Stella showed her the goats. And we're doing an exclamation point because that's like a solution. How do you know that Down on the Farm is a realistic fiction? Well, let's talk about what realistic fiction is, right? So we know that fiction means that it is fake, right? So we know that the story is not a true story. Nonfiction means it's not fake. So nonfiction means it's a true story that actually happened. But fiction means it's a fake story. So let's talk about how we know it's fiction. The first thing we look at is always our pictures, right? And the pictures in the story, as you can see on my page, are drawn. Somebody drew these. We call them illustrations. So they're not real. So we know it's a fiction story because the pictures aren't real. And it never said it was a true story. You know what I mean? It was definitely a made-up story that was meant to entertain us, right? So we know that fiction stories, often the author's purpose is to entertain us. So we can start with, we know it was a fiction story because the author, because it was entertaining. And most of the time, fiction stories are written to entertain, right? And then we can also write, also, it has illustrations or drawn pictures, okay? Now let's talk about what the realistic part means, okay? So realistic means it seems real, right? So this story, even though we know it's a fiction story because it was mostly entertaining and it has the illustrations, it's realistic fiction because this could really happen, right? So there could be a little girl that goes to a farm and here's the goats. All of those things are real. Now, if the goats were talking to humans or there were aliens or if the girl learned how to fly, none of those things are realistic. Those things don't really happen. So those are not realistic fiction. So we're going to add to this, we know that it is realistic. This over a little bit. Realistic fiction because it could happen in real life, right? And then if you were to do this on Wonders, if you decided to go on and type these things, you could hit submit, and then Miss Hyatt would be able to see them. All right, but we're just going to X out, and we're going to keep going because I want to show you then at the end of our story. So we just talked about how that was a realistic fiction. Well, this story is a nonfiction because it is not fake. It's about real things, and it's actually a how-to, which, if you remember, is one of the informational. So remember we talked about on our pie chart in writing, authors have three purposes. They can be persuading you, which is the argumentative writing that we do, right? And that's when you have, your beginning and your three parts in the middle that are all facts trying to persuade someone to be on your team. So we talked about you could write a persuasive essay to the cafeteria trying to convince them to serve ice cream. Then we have informational, and that's when you're writing, a how-to is informational, or like your weather report was informational. You're not trying to convince anybody to change the weather or to believe in the weather. You're just telling them what the weather was. Same thing with how-tos. You're not trying to convince anybody of anything. You're just telling them how to do something. And the last kind's entertain, and that's what we just talked about, and that's when the author is writing to entertain us. Most of the time, that's a fiction story. It can be a nonfiction story as well, but it kind of just depends. So this story is called How to Make a Rain Stick, okay? And so we are going to, I'm just going to show you this. I'm not going to read through it. But if you have these materials at home and you wanted to make a rain stick, that would be sort of a fun STEM science activity for you to do. And it kind of goes back to the weather that we talked about a little bit kind of inventions. And it kind of ties it all up together because the rain stick makes noise. So it kind of ties in all three of the themes we've talked about so far. So you can see here's the rain stick instructions, the how-to. And so if you wanted to do this, you could pause the video and read those yourself. But we're going to look down here, and it says, look at both selections and how were these sounds made. So there were two sounds that we heard in the first story. We heard the sounds of the goats. And in the second story, it told us about how to make the sounds of a rain stick. So you can say that those stories are similar because they both talked about and focused on a sound. Okay. All right. So for today, you don't need to do anything else with this story. This was just sort of a listening along and practicing with me. But now you're going to click on the choice board that is below this video. And there's all kinds of fun options. Just pick 2. Don't spend super long amounts of time on them. Just pick 2 quick activities, maybe 10 minutes on each tops, and then you can move on to the next thing. But I wanted to give you a choice of the activities for you to try and practice our skills today, so that you were really engaged. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for listening to the story with me, and I will see you again soon. Bye, first graders.